In this video, we are going to learn about how chromosomes can help determine your aging in your body. So cells obey a clock that tells them how many times they're able to divide. And so how exactly does a cell know how many divisions remain? It has to do with their chromosomes, the end of their chromosomes called their telomeres. So telomeres, as you can see here, are the ends of the chromosomes. So these yellow caps that you see there in our cells, those little caps are actually regions of non-coding DNA. So when I say non-coding, it means they don't have code for making an important protein. They're just kind of extra DNA tacked on. And as your body divides, every time it divides, it copies the DNA. But due to some quirks in DNA polymerase, it is not very effective at replicating the ends of chromosomes. And so every time you copy a cell and you make a new copy of the DNA for a new cell, the ends of the chromosomes get a little shorter and shorter. And you can see those little yellow ends. By the time you're an older person, those ends are nearly gone. Okay, so telomeres are dealing with aging. So let's just define what a telomere is. There are regions of repetitive nucleotide sequences at the end of the chromosome. So like I said before, they are non-coding, so they don't code for important proteins. They're just kind of extra DNA for protection. And they protect the ends of the chromosomes from deterioration. So this is a special picture. You can see that they have radioactively labeled the telomeres, and so they glow yellow. So you can see all the chromosomes in your body have these telomeres, which you can also see here. But if we zoomed in on it, you would just see repeating kind of DNA, kind of nonsense DNA. It doesn't code for proteins, but it's there and it serves an important job. So why exactly do we need telomeres? I mentioned every time the cell divides, the chromosomes get a little shorter, and it has to do with DNA polymerase. So if you remember back to DNA replication, okay, the DNA is going to separate, and in order to begin synthesizing a new DNA strand, there has to be an RNA primer that is put down. And then DNA polymerase can build off of that RNA primer. So on the leading strand, there's a primer, and then it builds from there. In the lagging strand, you remember, it has to make it in these special little sections called Okazaki fragments, each with their own primer. Well, DNA polymerase is a quirky enzyme, and it can only build off an existing nucleotide strand. So that RNA primer needs to be replaced with DNA. So that primer gets removed, but DNA polymerase can't land. Okay, it has nothing at the end of that chromosome for it to land on and build off of. It doesn't have an existing strand. There's a gap because there's no existing strand to build off of. So as a result, DNA polymerase can't fill the gap. And now this chromosome is a little bit shorter. The other one is okay at this end, but the other end would be a little bit shorter. Okay, and so every time the cell divides, basically the ends of the chromosomes get eaten away a little bit. And you're going to end up with shorter and shorter DNA molecules with each round of cell division. So here you can see that happening. Here's our original new cell. And every time the cell divides, the telomeres are getting worn away a little bit each time. Now that's really important. This stresses why telomeres are so important. This purple part, think of that as genes. Those are the directions for making proteins. We don't want our genes to be eaten away every time a cell divides. If you're eating away really important codes for proteins, that means that your body is not going to be able to make the proteins it needs, and that cell could get out of whack and might die or not do its job properly. So instead, by having these telomeres, these repeated non-coding sections, we can eat away those and still protect the genes. The genes aren't getting eaten away. And it's only when the telomeres are gone where the genes would then start to be eating away that the cells die And the special name for that is apoptosis. So you can see these cells are kind of gray or they're dying. Okay, so they're triggering cell death to prevent important genes from being eroded away. So it's something that the cell does to help prevent cancer. Okay, having these telomeres and then having them wear away before genes do. Okay, it's basically a little insurance that as cells divide, cancer doesn't occur. So what happens in cells that really need to divide a lot? So let's talk about two types of cells that need to divide a lot. The first one are stem cells. You have stem cells throughout your body. We call them adult stem cells when you're in a beyond the embryo state. Okay, we'll learn lots more about stem cells later this year, the difference between embryonic and adult stem cells. But we have stem cells in our body, and their job is basically to repair and replace damaged cells. So you have stem cells in your skin, which help kind of replace the ones that get damaged and fall off over time because of exposure to the elements. Okay, you have stem cells lining all of your digestive tract, because as you eat food, that food scrapes away at your cells lining your digestive tract, so you got to replace those. You have stem cells in different parts of your body, basically places that need to grow and repair a lot. So stem cells have to be able to repair. They don't want to have a short life. You don't want your stem cells to eventually stop producing more skin. That would leave you vulnerable to infection. So it's important that stem cells can keep dividing. The other things are called germ cells. Germ cells are the cells that divide by something called meiosis, and they make eggs and sperm. Okay? And so women have kind of a limited number of eggs they produce in their lifetime. But men, once they hit puberty, can produce like large quantities of sperm throughout their life, kind of like an unlimited amount. And so they need to be able to do cell division, to do meiosis, and make a lot of sperm to reproduce. We'll learn more about germ cells and meiosis and stem cells in the next unit. But basically, both of these types of cells need to divide and need to be able to divide throughout the life of the organism to be able to do its jobs. So what do they have that helps them be protected against the wearing away of chromosomes? So what's preventing the life of these cells from being too short? Well, they have a gene turned on that produces an enzyme called telomerase. And telomerase's job is to extend the length of the telomeres. So here you can see telomerase is adding on, almost this red section. It's kind of building and building and building, and it's building a longer telomere. Okay, and that basically will then allow primase to come in, a primer to be laid down, and then DNA polymerase to work and extend that length of that chromosome. So if you have a longer telomere, that means you can divide more times before the cell has to divide, which means your body's able to repair and replace or reproduce as much as it needs to. Now, cancer cells can have mutations that activate telomerase. So like your normal body cells, like a muscle cell or a bone cell or a brain cell, might not have telomerase activated because they have a specific job to do. Their job is not reproducing and making more and more cells. And so sometimes when DNA replication occurs badly or when there's an environmental damage to the DNA, you might have a mutation that then turns on telomerase in a normal body cell. So not in a stem cell, not in a germ cell. And as a result, those cells now have extended life. They can divide a lot more. And this is one of the mutations that's often found in cancer. So this activation of telomerase, and it allows them to continually divide. So here you can see germ cells, stem cells, they have telomerase acted. They're telomeres stay pretty long throughout the course of a series of cell divisions. Now, normal cells, you can see there's a decline, but at this point, okay, there's some sort of mutation, okay? And as a result, telomerase gets activated, and now those cancer cells keep their telomeres longer than normal, and so that allows them to divide and reproduce more. We call these cells immortal cells, like the immortal life of Henrietta Lacks. Has been shown that HeLa cells also have telomerase activated, and that allows them to divide way more than a typical cell would.